start on time and end on time. So that's what I'm going to do. And for a moment, if you all could just close your eyes. Close your eyes. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm going to do the same thing as you're going to do. We're going to take a deep breath. Okay, you can open it. Sorry. Now, in starting, I would like to say Jacob 6:12, which is on the handout. Oh, be wise. What can I say more? And sisters, I'm going to kind of follow my notes at first. Probably do most of it, but there's a large part of me that would like to just say that scripture and sit down or go to one of the other classes. That would be very comfortable for me. I wish I could say that this talk has been prepared for over a month, that I knew it forwards and backwards, but I can't. What I can tell you is that I've searched, and I've studied, and I've studied, and I've searched. I've pondered, I've prayed, I've fretted, struggled, and then searched some more. I've struggled over the topic and what exactly I should share with you today. I've written this talk at least 3 times and would venture to say probably more, so would my family. As of this last Sunday, I still didn't feel comfortable with what I had prepared. I still didn't feel like it was what Alan thought I wanted me to share with you today. So after much more study and many more prayers, and I didn't fast on Fast Sunday because we were away and forgot, fasting, I finally felt comfort and inspired by the Spirit of what I should share with you today. I feel like I should share with you the journey that I took to seek the wisdom that hopefully I might say the things that I need to say to you here today. And that is that we might teach wisdom to our families and to the youth. Sisters, if there's one thing that I can get you to take away from this talk today, and those who are watching, it's that both now and later, it's never too early. It's never too late to start teaching our children wisdom, to start teaching them to be wise. Do it now. Do it later. Do it often. It is our responsibility as daughters in Zion. Well, I'm going to share with you this journey. I'd like for you to think of ways, or listen and see if you can find ways that we seek knowledge, that we gain understanding, and ultimately learn wisdom. Okay. So I got a call from Sister Pinkerton about the first part of June, and she left a message on my answering machine at home. Now, if any of you know me and my family, we don't answer that. We figured those of you that know us, you know that you can text us or call us on our cell phone, but don't try the house phone. The only person that answers that phone is my daughter, Lexi, who doesn't have a cell phone. Anyways, I listen to those messages about once a month, maybe. And so Sister Pinkerton's call must have come around that time, just before I listened to the messages. And she asked me to call her back. I have to say, bells, whistles, lights went off in my head, and I honestly even considered not calling back. How did she know that I didn't get messages? But you're all sitting here looking at me today, so you know that I did. I called her back. Now, I was taught growing up that when a leader gives you a call or extends a call to you, you're supposed to accept that they have received the divine guidance from Heavenly Father to extend the call to you. Well, when I called Sister Pinkerton back and she gave me the big news that she would like to extend this call to me to speak with you, I laughed. I mean, like I really laughed. I said, you're joking, right? She goes, nope, not joking. We'd really like for you to give this talk. In the past, I'm going to say BC, before the call, if you were to ask me if I considered myself a teacher, I would say no, absolutely not. In fact, no. I always heard this voice, little voice in the back of my head that says, you're not good enough. They know way more than you know. People are going to judge you. They're going to look down on you. You're just not good enough. I hate to be the center of attention. I hate to have all eyes on me. It goes way back to grade school, and having to stand in front of the class in a spelling bee. I don't know how many of you guys can remember that. Or back in those days. You often had to go out in the hall and read a story, and then come back in the room and retell the story to the class. And they had been told the story as well, and you're supposed to try to get it as exact to the story as you can. Sisters, this is every dyslexic kid's nightmare. That was my nightmare. That, or even just having to read in class. Anyway, so back to the phone call. So I told these fears and concerns to Sister Pinkerton, and told her the anxiety that I feel being the center of attention, which none of you feel right. But she asked me if I would just think about it, pray about it, and give it a week. And then she would call me back and I could let her know if I would accept the call. She gave me the topic, which is to teach wisdom. And it's from DNC 88-118, and she read at the beginning of this conference. It says, as we all have not faith, seek ye diligently to teach one another words of wisdom. So, I began to study this topic. First, I studied the topic of teaching. If any of you have researched or even typed in the church website, teaching, there's a lot of information and talks and scriptures about teaching. I read many of them, some of them, and then I decided, okay, let's go wisdom. So I switched over to put in the topic wisdom. There are a lot of talks about wisdom, a lot of scriptures about wisdom. So I hate to admit it, but after I had researched this topic for several days, I decided to pray about it. I know, when you feel hesitant to pray, that's generally when we know the answer probably that we're going to get, and we just don't want to get it yet, or we just don't want to hear it. That was me. So I began to pray, and when this happened, you all probably know what happened. I heard this other little voice, and it said, study, search, pray. I thought I've already done all these things. And it just kept coming to my mind. Study, search, pray. Have faith. You'll get an answer. So this little voice, we all know who he is. I felt inspired to read my Nature of a Blessing, which I might add is personal scripture, right? It talked about being a teacher, talked about me being a teacher specifically. And it also said, where much is given, much is required. And then, no joke, it said, you'll be blessed with knowledge and wisdom. Not just once did it say it. 2 different places it said it. It went on to say other things, but I could not get that out of my mind. I felt chastened, to be honest with you. I mean, I got this patriarchal blessing when I was 13. And that had never really stuck out at me. I always heard the other little voice that says you're not good enough. There's so much other people know more than you. So I continued on in my journey, and I found a talk by Carlos A. I'm going to say it wrong. I think it's Godoy, G-O-D-O-Y, for those of you who want to go look it up. I was 70, and it's titled, "The Lord Has a Plan for Us." He says, and I'm going to paraphrase, "When everything seems to be going well for you, your family, your career, your service in church, we should ask ourselves the question, if you continue living as you're living, will the promised blessings in your patriarchal blessing be fulfilled?" I know, right? I shook my head and knew what I had to do. I gained the wisdom I had sought. And a day or two later, when Sister Pinkerton called and asked again what I thought about giving this talk, I said, "Okay, well, if you really think that I'm the one that should be giving this talk, I will trust in the Lord and I'll do it." So here I am, standing in front of you, being held up by a strength better than my own, literally, because my knees are shaking up here, and so I bet you can't see them. Shaking so bad that if I had worn my kitten heels, I might fall off. So, ladies, I don't know if you were thinking, hopefully you were thinking as I was talking to you about my journey. I narrowed it down to 3 main principles of actions that helped me gain wisdom to be comfortable sharing this topic and this talk with you today. And the first one is study diligently. The second one, pray earnestly. And the third one, serve willingly. Okay, DNC 88118 continues on to say, "Seek ye out of the best books words of wisdom. Seek learning, even by study and also by faith." As we learn how to seek and study, everyone learns differently. We will know what works for us. Develop the habits that you need to receive the wisdom that you desire. Also, teach your children these habits. Do they see you reading your scriptures? Do they see you on your knees as you're praying? Do they hear you asking questions that they just assume you know the answers to? President Brigham Young said, "There's only one source from whence men obtain wisdom." Now I have thought of that. One source that you obtain wisdom. I mean, for some people, older people, younger people that know so much more than me. But he says, "There's only one source from whence men obtain wisdom, and that is God, the fountain of all wisdom." Have you guys ever thought of it that way? I hadn't really thought of it that way. I thought some people are book smart, not me. Some people kind of really smart, been there, done that kind of smart. Kind of me. But that's not the case, right? President Young says that wisdom comes from God. Again, we gain wisdom from Heavenly Father. And how does he teach us this? President Hinckley said, "The truest source of divine wisdom is the word of the Lord, and these the sacred works of the church." So sisters, not only do we have the scriptures, but if y'all remember, we also have all the prophets' talks, which takes me back to the beginning and seeking and studying, and how many things that we have at our fingertips to get knowledge nowadays. You type in anything in the church website and boom, 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 here it comes. You're going to have more than you can, almost overwhelming, more than you can imagine. I might add a caution here. If you're called to teach, which we all have been called, especially as moms, daughters in Zion, as I said at the beginning, there's so much information that you can get information, and then you can get more information. And while you're seeking and studying, preparing your Relief Society lesson or preparing your Sunday school lesson, are you neglecting opportunities to teach your own children? I have to say that I'm a little humbled by that, even with this particular talk. All right, we'll come back to that. Pray earnestly to gain understanding. We all know James 1:5. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not. And it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Sisters, don't pray for tasks equal to your abilities. Pray for the abilities to equal your task. When you perform those tasks with faith, it won't be a miracle, you'll be a miracle. The Lord will answer your prayers. I have testimony that He answers prayers. So many different levels do I have this, but just in this talk, and the wisdom that I personally gained to be able to stand before you today. He will direct your path. And when it comes to teaching our children, who do we need direction from? Come back to that. Serve willingly. Would you say that standing in front of someone, sisters in church, teaching Sunday school or teaching Relief Society, or even me teaching this talk right now, but that's service? Are we serving willingly? Are we laughing at Sister and saying, you're joking, right? It makes a difference in our attitude. When you think back to a teacher that you had in school, or even a teacher that you had in primary or young women's, what was it about that teacher that resonated with you? Was it something that she said? Was it something that she did? Was it the atmosphere of the room? Was it that you ate breakfast that morning? I would choose to guess that it was the attitude that she taught you. You felt loved. You felt like she really cared about you. Or he really cared about you. That they wanted you to learn. They wanted you to know the wisdom that they were sharing with you for yourself. Mosiah 2:17 says, which you scripturally can see that now. And behold, I tell you these things that ye may learn wisdom, that ye may learn that when you are in the service of your fellow beings, you are only in the service of your God. Sisters, we're all instruments in the Lord's hands. He needs us to do His work. He needs us to teach His children. They were His children first. We also, in teaching, need to remember that we need to remain humble and teachable ourselves. Sometimes we can learn the best lessons from our youth. Just as we heard earlier today, that sweet little girl teach her dad about covenants as he baptized her. We have to be doers of the word, not just hearers. And how do we do that? Service. We also need to pay attention to our life experiences, not just the challenges and the trials, and be grateful for the trials, but because they keep us teachable, right? They keep us humble. But also pay attention for the learning opportunities that we can gain, but also that our children can gain while they're watching you experience these trials. Don't forget to take the opportunity to teach them what you're learning during your own trials and struggles. They will see the wisdom that you've learned, and hopefully they'll gain that wisdom for themselves. Sisters, if we're living worthy of the Spirit, we can learn wisdom in all that we do, every day, even cleaning the toilet. I read this conference talk. You guys might remember it. And I'm not a very good storyteller, so that's why I keep referring to my notes. That and jokes. My kids just tell me, Mom, don't do it. just don't. I said, but why? Tried to tell them a joke. Epic fail. Then went to work and told them how my joke was an epic fail. Have them say, well, tell us the joke. And I told them the joke. And they said, one of my coworkers actually said, you know, that joke would have been better if you said, oh, rope walked in instead of a string. I should have known. So anyways, I'm reading most of this, even though I'm paraphrasing, because that's my comfort zone. And again, when we are teaching, isn't it best to be comfortable with what we're teaching? So back to the talk. This one sister was often up in the middle of the night taking care of her children, and her neighbor across the street the next day would come over to her house and say, I noticed that you are up late at night with your children. Let me take the kids and I'll watch them while you take a nap. And the sister was so grateful. And it wasn't until this had happened numerous times that the sister realized that if her neighbor saw her lights on in the middle of the night, that she must have been up with her own children. And she probably needed a nap too. If we're willing to serve others, we're going to gain the knowledge and the wisdom that we need to teach them. If we do these things, we study, pray, and have the Spirit with us, we're going to know what they need. Wisdom is different than understanding. Right? Wisdom and knowledge are different. Wisdom and understanding is different than knowledge and intelligence. Would you guys agree with that? To know a thing and do a thing are two different things. You can't teach wisdom. You can teach with wisdom. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can't make someone be wise. Lord knows my mom tried. But we can share our wisdom with others and have the Spirit with us, that the Spirit can testify to them of the truths that you're teaching. Sisters, we're all teachers. I learned it. I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't think I was a teacher, but we are all teachers. Whether you're a mom, a sister, an aunt, a friend, a coworker, whether you have a called teacher or you're a student, you're still a teacher. All those that we come in contact with, you're going to teach them something about you, maybe even if it's just a second. What are we teaching them? What wisdom are we going to impart to them, to share? Also, sometimes you can clean your house really good. Give it a deep clean, right? Got company coming over. Sometimes you get a call from a friend or a Relief Society president that says, hey, can we step over for just a minute? We'll be there in like 5. My point is, sometimes you can study a lot and gain a lot and share a lot. But sometimes it's just a little. Sometimes that's all you have time for. Make it good. Make it the best you can. We live in a time that is spoken of in 2 Nephi chapter 9. Oh, the vainness and the frailties and the foolishness of men. When they are learned, they think they are wise, and they hearken not unto the counsel of God. For they set it aside, supposing that they know of themselves. Wherefore their wisdom is foolishness, and it profiteth them not, and they shall perish. But to be learned is good, if they hearken unto the counsels of God. Again, now we're going to go back to it being important, most important for us to teach in our homes. Do you guys, I'm sure you've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we in the church know that it takes a church to raise a child, but most important is what they gain in the home. I forgot who it was that says that that's not going to talk, see. But there's no wisdom or nothing that can be learned that would constitute failure, no, something like that. Probably look at that. I found this talk by Elder Bradley D. Foster. You guys remember, I think it was actually this last conference. He was interviewing a young man named Pablo, preparing to go on a mission. Do you guys remember it? Right? We'll paraphrase again. He was asking Pablo the questions necessary to put in his mission papers. And he was so impressed with this young man and the answers that he gave. They were spot on. That he reworded it thinking that maybe he didn't understand it correctly, and he still answered with the spot on responses. And finally he says to him, what was it? Who was it that taught you and helped you get to this point in life where you stand so uprightly before the Lord? And do you guys remember what he said? His father. Elder Foster asked him if he'd share the story with him. He says, when I was 9, my dad took me aside and he said, I was 9 once too. He said, there's some things that you may come across. You may see some people cheating in school. You might hear some people who are swearing. You'll probably even have days when you won't want to go to church. Now, when these things happen, or anything else that troubles you, I want you to come and talk to me. And I'll help you get through them. And then I'll tell you what comes next. I thought that was really cool. Like, he's telling them this little bit of wisdom, right? This little bit that he can understand at that age. And then he tells them, come and talk to me. I'll help you through it. And then I'll tell you what comes next. So Pastor asked him, he says, Pablo, what did your dad tell you when you were 10? And he says, he warned me about pornography and dirty jokes. And he says, what about when you were 11? He cautioned me about things that could be addictive and reminded me about using my agency. Sisters, here was a father that was teaching his son line upon line, precept upon precept. He knew that children learn when they're ready. That doesn't always seem to happen when we're ready to teach, right? We need to, again, be in tune so that we can know when those teaching moments are there. Even if it's when you're right in the middle of doing something that's so important to you at that moment. If your child comes to you with there's a moment to teach, stop what you're doing and teach. 2 Nephi 28:30 says, I will give unto the children of men line upon line, precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little. And blessed are those that hearken unto my precepts, and lend an ear unto my counseling, for they shall learn wisdom. For unto him that receiveth, I will give more. If our children are small, or those that we're called to teach are small, start small. Start at their level. If you're teaching a teenager, or you're teaching young women, or seminary, or you have a teenager at home, teach them at their level. Talk to them. Let them talk to you, and really listen. And then I might have prayed a lot for them. If you have children that are grown, or you have nieces and nephews that are grown, I would dare say it's still not too late to teach them. In fact, when our children are grown, I'm speaking from my own experience, not just with my own children, my own daughter, but as a child, when we get older, our parents get wiser, don't they? Right? They said, oh, now I get it. Now I get why she said that. Elder Foster went on to say, that as he thought about the experience that he had had with Pablo, that he felt sad because his children were grown. His grandchildren lived far away. And he didn't feel like he had done that as well as Pablo's father had done in teaching him. So when he got home, he told his wife his experience. They called the kids and they said, we've got something really important we need to talk to you about. And the kids were scared of what they were going to hear. And he says, your mom and I were once 31 too, with a young family, responsibilities, and then he went on to teach them. Not only did he teach them at that moment, but he imparted the story of Pablo and why he was talking to him. And he counseled them to teach their children line upon line, precept upon precept. If we share with our children the possible consequences of their decisions and how they can affect their future, we can, through sharing our knowledge and wisdom, help them see with greater clarity the best paths to take in the present. Sisters, again, the most important aspect of teaching, particularly our children, but really, again, at any of those teaching moments that we have, is to have the Holy Ghost, who is the author of all truth and who is the real teacher. Again, we're just the instrument. It doesn't matter the knowledge that you're sharing or shoving, as my kids might say. You're still teaching wisdom if you're teaching with the Holy Ghost. Okay, again, I'm going to repeat the 3 things that we can do to gain wisdom. Study diligently, pray earnestly, serve willingly. So I have this really high-tech, even higher than the projection, techno moment that I want to share with you. And again, I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes. And I can see you, so I can see you're not participating. I want you to think of the Grand Canyon, the vastness of the Grand Canyon, and liken it to the world that we live in. Now, I want you to think of the edge of the Grand Canyon, that sheer drop on the other side. I want you to picture a person on the edge of the cliff. They might be sitting on the edge of the cliff. They might be standing near or peering over. Again, this is your picture in your mind. It's perfect. I am sharing exactly what I want you to see. Now, I want you to picture a man on the edge, just inches away, and he's doing a handstand. Is he being wise? Are we allowing our children, because we're not teaching the wisdom that we have, teaching them the gospel principles? Are we teaching them that it's safer to stand back from the ledge? Don't even get near the edge. Or are they doing a handstand on the edge of the Grand Canyon? Okay, you can open your eyes. I don't know if it's a poem or what it's called. I'm going to call it an analogy, or a way that Christ would teach. And it's called the fence or the ambulance. I don't know if you guys have heard it. Have any of you heard of it? Raise your hands. Okay. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to try to do it justice. Again, think about that little child in the third grade standing in front of you going, oh, I'm going to have to read in front of everybody. Okay, so I'm going to try to do it justice. The community was divided into two fractions, one favoring the fence around the cliff, the other the ambulance down in the valley. And the ambulance, it seemed, to have the majority, and so they put the ambulance down in the valley. Then an old sage remarked, "It's a marvel to me that people give more attention to repairing results than to stopping the cause, when they had such better aim at prevention. Let us stop at the source, all this mischief," he cried. "Come, neighbors and friends, let us rally. If the cliff we will fence, we might almost dispense with the ambulance down in the valley." "Oh, he's a fanatic," the others rejoined. "Dispense with the ambulance? Never. He'd dispense with all charities, too, if he could. No, we'll support them forever." But the sensible few, who were practical too, will not bear with such nonsense much longer. They believed that prevention is better than cure, that their party will soon be the stronger. Better guide well the young than reclaim them when old, for the voice of true wisdom is calling. To rescue the fallen is good, but it is best to prevent them from falling. Better close at the source of temptation and crime than deliver from dungeon and galley. Better put up a strong fence around the top of the cliff than an ambulance down in the valley. So sisters, we have a few minutes, and I would like for kind of an open opportunity for us to share comments with one another. Things that ways that you gained wisdom. It may even be a part of wisdom that you're supposed to share with us here today that's to help someone else. Because when we're participating, aren't we teaching? So, before we do this, while you're thinking in your heads of ways that you want to participate in the story you might want to share, I'm going to emphasize again. Now and later. It's never too early and it's never too late to start teaching our children with wisdom, to teach them to be wise. Now, does anyone want to share a story? Okay, talk loud because we're recording stuff.
So I took a mission in Southern France. I think part of the reason I was to learn how to listen. I think thinking about something in my mind. I kind of talk around girls who always do the next thing to say at me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And something that interrupts people makes you really excited. And that's what I do, or know it all night. And so as a missionary, you get wrapped up in people's lives. And in Southern France, there's a huge refugee, and there's huge lots of people, all from walks of life, and so I have lots of stories and lots of different just backgrounds, and not being native French speaker too, listen. But I think towards the end of my mission, I think the greatest thing I gained though was to really sit and just listen. Not like thinking about what to listen and this and this, but to really be a listener. And I feel like that's the biggest piece of wisdom that I gained, to really listen.
Thank you. I feel the same way. It's usually because I'm afraid I'm going to forget what I want to say, that I interrupt. But that is true. And I might add, not only to just listen to what's being said, but also to take a moment to listen to the Holy Ghost as He prompts you. And don't we generally have to be still and quiet to hear that? Take out all the voices we're telling ourselves in our head, like you're not good enough, and actually listen. Anyone else?
I was going to say, I've always been super blessed in my life to hang out with women who are exceptional, women that can do so many great things, and they're so organized and so together, and such great moms, and look great, all those things. And sometimes I would, I'm not going to say compare, but I think we all have a tendency to do that. And put this scale up there that I want to measure to. And I saw a saying many years ago that has helped so many times in my life that I say it almost daily. To truly become number one, you must constantly strive to surpass yourself when you are in competition. And so when I see other women being so absolutely incredible, I can appreciate them right where they are and not feel like it's a contest. And so that allows me to bring them to shine in their own life.
Thank you. And you never know, sister. They may be looking at you thinking the same thing. Aren't we generally our own toughest critic? I would venture to guess that they probably are.
I was the first of 7 children. And so, needless to say, I was the mini mom, the one that everybody was sick of, bossy sister, older. And I remember one time I was holding a baby, my mom was holding another baby, and the baby was crying, and I was getting very frustrated. And she said, "Jamie, that baby knows if you want to hold it or not. That baby knows." And so I tried to don't always scream and do this, but the times when I want to impart wisdom in my girls so bad, a lot of times I'm angry, I'm upset, and I'm like, let me get it through to you. But if we step back and we teach with love, God has love, that baby knows. And if we have love in our heart and do it in the right attitude, I think we won't get the glassy-eyed, appreciating them more. Get better reception. And you let them know how proud you are of them and how much you're for them and your intelligence and things.
I agree. Thank you.
Let's say let's be emotional, but I just can't confident to say this. My son, he was just officially diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and he also has anxiety disorder. And it's not that I didn't know this all already. But he's very difficult to communicate with. He doesn't have it really that bad. He's on the low end, but I have been finding it very difficult to understand him, and he's been finding it difficult to understand me, especially with school starting up now, and things are getting more chaotic for him and harder for him, and he's been having breakdowns and meltdowns all the time, and I find myself relying on the Spirit so much more than I ever have with any of my other kids. I always thought raising my kids, with my older kids, thinking, oh, yeah, I need to always have the Spirit with me because I always need to know if my kids need anything or whatever. But with this one, it's a lot harder. And it's a lot more intense. And I've been really struggling. And I think just to answer your question, I think relying wholeheartedly on the Spirit and allowing Heavenly Father to teach us, because He knows my son and He's His son too. He knows how His mind works and what He thinks of and how things will work with Him and what won't work. And I'm trying to allow Heavenly Father to teach me how to be a good mom to Him, because it's very different than anything else I've ever learned about how to be a good mom. This is a completely different ballgame, and just learning, or just being humble and humble and accepting the Lord's will, and really listening to learn how to help Him.
I had a thought come to mind as you were sharing your story that isn't that how Heavenly Father feels about us? We're all His children. We all learn differently. How does He teach us? He teaches us through the Holy Ghost. How do we gain wisdom from His words? How do we teach wisdom? Be wise. Jacob 6:12. Oh, be wise. What can I say more? Sisters, thank you for coming to my class. I hope that there's something that was said here today that will help you in whatever it is that you're going through now, in the future, with those you're teaching now, with those that you're going to be teaching, with those that you come in contact with, that you can be a better teacher. And I leave these things with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Now, don't forget to come get your now and laters. And I have a friend, Jamie, who gives you credit because I'm not an artsy gal, who made these amazing handouts. And if you want to see the picture of the man doing the handstand on the cliff, because there really is one, I have it right here that I can show you. And it is pretty darn scary. Very scary. Oh, and you can take it now later and hand out to you for your teaching sisters or someone else that you might share it with.